Welcome viewers. On behalf of Iravati Research and Communication Center, this is Pratim Ranjan Bose. In this edition, we will discuss about the significance of the recently concluded 4-day visit of the Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in Delhi. Bangladesh, as you know, is India's key ally in South Asia and a top trade partner globally. I have with me Dr. Sreeradha Datta, Center Head and Senior Fellow, Neighbourhood Studies of Vivekananda International Foundation or VIF in Delhi. Dr. Datta is a well-known academic and expert on regional issues. She is also a mentor of Iravati Research. Welcome, Dr. Datta.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I also participated in a few research projects spearheaded by her. Together, we will try to find out the future direction of Indo-Bangladesh cooperation, which is the cornerstone of regional cooperation in South Asia. Dr. Datta, your turn. Security cooperation, water sharing of common rivers, border management, combating human trafficking. A lot of issues are discussed between these two leaders. Some are agreed upon. Prime Minister Modi underscored the need for more clarity on resource sharing, particularly rivers. Prime Minister Hasina announced Mujib Scholarship for the descendants of the nearly 2,000 Indian soldiers killed in the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War. If you quickly summarize the key takeaways of the meeting and if there is any disappointment. Over to you.
Firstly, I think, thank you, Pratim. I said the first takeaway here is, and I think I'm going to paraphrase what Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said. It's reiteration of tested ties. I mean, the two neighbors have worked very well for over a decade now, and this was just a continuation of that. I think it's a the process was important in this particular summit meeting. Some have said there is no big takeaway, possibly so, because we were not even expecting a big takeaway. So, but in that context, I think whether it was Kushiara, whether it was a railway bridge, and of course, 7 agreements in that, and one of the longest joint statements also, which, as you just mentioned, touched upon every aspect of the bilateral relation, whether it was defense engagement, whether it's border security problems, and of course, other water resources, and every other aspect. And I think the good thing about the relation right now is that it stands at a very solid ground. Look at the economics. Look at the way the bilateral partnership has grown in terms of infrastructure projects, in terms of all kinds of cross-border facilitation that has taken place, which has been further promised in this joint statement, and of course every other aspect, including terrorism and security aspect, which is so core to the relationship. We will recall that it was Sheikh Hasina's addressing our security concerns which unveiled the kind of lines of credit that India offered to begin with in 2010. And today we stand here at 8 billion plus lines of credit. Also, some more grants have been given at this particular juncture. Basically, it's the joint partnership, development partners is something, is how the two look at each other, and this was a work in progress. So I think while there are disappointments, because I'm aware of the fact for Bangladesh, water is a key emotive issue, and the fact that we have 54 common rivers and we haven't been able to sign, except for Kushiara this time. They've been wanting Tista,
I think
which
we
is
signed three. First was Ganga, second was Feni, and third is Kushiara.
yes, for this, but I'm saying, but the point here, I would also like to say that while we haven't signed Tista, and this time, of course, there was a framework of 7 rivers that being discussed together. I think the Joint River Commission took place after a gap of more than a decade, so that's a positive step. But the point is, even though we have not signed Tista water is not stymied by India. The flow continues. There's a problem, and this is something that I think all of us are constantly discussing, that water flow is actually important only during the lean season, which is essentially 2 to 3 months in a year. And if we are able to, and I think that is what it's required at this moment. The two neighbors who are such good friends, who have a huge trust with towards each other, should be able to take the conversation away from the Cusack's and flaws. What I'm suggesting is that both of us need water for a specific reason, and we also know why Tista has been held back. It's not only political. There is actually a need for Tista water in the upper regions of North Bengal. The point is that both are on both sides agro-based economy. Why are we not able to sit and discuss our requirements? Why are we not able to supplement and complement when there is adequate water? Also, there are many suggestions as to how we can actually augment the water flow in Tista through canals and through other means, which unfortunately somehow the two neighbors are not discussing. We are constantly talking about an agreement, an interim agreement, maybe. That's not the point. Point is we are aware of the fact that there is, due to climate change and other issues, there is, lessening of water flow all over the region, and Tista is also one of them. So to expect a
Now,
certain
if
fixed
if
quantum is unreasonable.
if I may interrupt you, I think there has been studies and estimates done in Bangladesh also. I remember I wrote a report quoting a Bangladesh expert who has been part of the river commission, that in the lean season, the river doesn't have as much water. And historically so. Probably tried building the trust for last over 1 decade. And secondly, this is, of course, I don't know whether you would agree. And second thing is, as the economies get more engaged, the issues will be, we will move away from the past when in 1996, the Ganga water sharing agreement, now the agreements and cooperation are a part and parcel of our relationship. We are just having something every day, somewhere or the other. The other day, the long problem of truck queues at Petropol has been resolved. Now there is
Yes.
a e-booking system and it is resolved. So things are constantly moving. Do you think that our expectations, well, I'm not disputing Bangladesh's expectation on Tista, but considering the span of development, all excepting Tista, almost all big issues are resolved. We had serious issues on border agreement, on maritime border, all are resolved. So, I mean, do we, the commentators or the researchers and those who are taking interest in these things, do we have to move away from these, issue-based discussions on a prime ministerial summit to a more contextual discussion?
Absolutely. In fact, I would actually say, from the Indian point of view, the kind of partnership that we have been able to establish with Bangladesh is actually a fulcrum of the regionalism that we are, envisaging. In fact, if you know, in the sub-region, which is, the Bangladesh, Nepal, India sub-regional MVA that has been signed, and we've now, as I think, partner, the cargo and the
Protocol.
passenger movement are being created. The protocols are going to come in place soon. And plus, of course, BIMSTEC. And we know Prime Minister Modi has a certain interest in pushing regionalism here in the South Asian context. So I think this is really the core base of that regionalism that we see. So while, as you exactly rightly said, that, nitty-gritty issues will remain, but the large context here is that there are two neighbors who've learned to trust each other and who've learned to find work towards it. And, political issues will remain. We are political nations, that cannot be avoided. But we are now focusing on positivities. And in fact, looking at much larger picture as to how, and I think that's a point that Prime Minister Modi keeps talking about, India being the engine of growth in South Asia. And I think, why don't you, all of you, climb onto it? Bangladesh, I think, has wholeheartedly climbed onto it, and it's been good for them. I mean, look at the kind of projects that's been unfolding there. So it's, I think, for the first time, again, it's been a 2010, the first breakthrough happened. 2014, the land boundary agreement happened. I think we've just moved from one big
2015.
picture to the other.
2015.
2015. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's been a very good work in progress. And I do agree that we don't need necessarily big tickets. It's not required. But as long as whatever work was promised was, has been initiated, as long as there's work progress on that, and that tangible takeaway, I think energy cooperation is one of the largest tangible takeaway between the two. And at this point of time, when the world is suffering, Bangladesh, as we know, has huge fuel crisis. I think India's support is critical, and I think I would like to ask you as to how do you see India supporting Bangladesh in this particular juncture?
No, it's not a case of supporting, it's a case of cooperation, I should say. I mean, very clearly, you see, Bangladesh, the energy economy is extremely crucial for your fiscal balance, as everyone understood. And Bangladesh economy, energy economy, they inherited it from Pakistan, which was built, unfortunately, on the American lines, where things were completely different. So you kept the pump prices low, so you sacrificed your tax opportunities. At the same time, on the electricity side, in Bangladesh, for example, as in 2020, 85% of the total electricity generated, I'm not talking about the capacity, but generated, was coming from either gas or fuel oil. Okay. Now,
Hmm.
this is a absolutely, I mean, this is pre 1970s, before the 1970s oil shock. This kind of economies were sustainable because gas worldwide is, if it is, its price is above 3.5 uh, million metric British thermal unit, it's unsuitable for electricity generation, unviable. Since 2003, Bangladesh started importing electricity, which is essentially coal based, from India. And that was 8% of generation, 7 to 8% of generation as in 2020. Now, their own coal based generation was around 2%. Now, if we understand that now that they are rationing electricity, right, which is
Hmm.
essentially gas-based electricity, which involves huge forex outgo. So
Hmm.
the share of this coal-based imported electricity must have gone up in the actual supply.
Yes.
But more importantly, during this meeting, we saw Rampal is being unveiled, first unit.
Yes.
And I
First
just
unit.
read
Yeah.
today that in Business Standard that Adani was building a 1600 megawatt unit at plant at Godda to
Yeah.
export electricity. The transmission lines were already being laid, a new
Hmm.
transmission line. So, and from December, they will start exporting coal based electricity. So, what is essentially going to happen is that in end of this year or early next year, Bangladesh's the energy basket is going to change substantially,
That, that's right.
which is a huge cushion against foreign exchange volatility. And on the fuel side, Bangladesh has finally hiked prices, though we may differ about the way of hiking, but they have hiked prices. Now it is comparable to Indian prices, pump prices. And on the other hand, the pipeline from Siliguri to Parbatipur, that is coming up. That will be operational very
Yes.
soon. So the energy, that is very interesting. What has changed over the last 10 years is that if we go back to 2009-10, when Indian exports were in the range of $2 billion or so, and we will
Hmm.
see it was mostly cotton and food items. Now
Yes.
energy is the big component in the whole
That's right. Yes.
export basket. And so it is not a case of and you are aware that the government created a framework so that Bangladesh, Nepal can participate in spot trade. And also
Yes.
the other day, the Indian Power Trading Corporation, they will put up a subsidiary in Nepal so that they can
Yes.
to facilitate supply to Bangladesh can
Bangladesh.
trade hydel power.
Yeah.
So I think,
Yeah.
I mean, what we are seeing is a regional, I mean, complete change in regional, I should say, regional energy economics. We have moved way ahead from those discussing those nitty gritties that there will be oil supply, there will be this supply, that supply. These are all taken for granted. What do you?
No, in
So,
fact, somebody from the Bangladesh delegation also mentioned Bhutan joining this grid that we are discussing, and there'll be probably some occasion in the near future when Bangladesh will be in a position to also uh, trade with Bhutan through
One
on
thing
energy.
that is probably a little far-fetched, for example, Bangladesh wants to take electricity directly from Nepal. Now you see, you have to draw 1,000-kilometer transmission line, which will cost a bomb. Okay,
Hmm.
through India only. In Bangladesh, they have to draw more.
That's there.
And then there is, grid connectivity is easier said than done, because there are a lot of technological mismatch between the countries.
That's right.
So you just cannot straight away put it single. It will happen eventually. It will happen, but we have to wait. There has to be a uniformity in systems. It was not. I mean, we
But
know
but the conversation has started. I think that's a big step forward. That
lot of yeah, yeah, sure. So where do you see? I mean, you were mentioning about infrastructure. How do you see this Rupsa bridge? It's not publicized as much, but it was unveiled, and it's a 5 kilometer long rail bridge that will is connecting Khulna and on the Khulna Mongla rail project. About the Indian LOC projects, of the Indian LOC projects, is Rupsa the most significant big project that has been implemented in recent times?
uh,
Because
yes, yes. In fact, as you rightly point out, I think there hasn't been enough publicity on this front, which should have. I mean, we've seen Bangladesh successfully build Podda Bridge, which is fascinating and fabulous. But I don't think this is any mean achievement that we've been able to do this. And again, the whole connectivity, transit, and easy accessibility of the cargo movement will also be happening through this access which we are building. And I think I haven't seen much of conversation about this in the Bangladesh or Indian media really, but this is likely to change the landscape of that part of the world where we can see a lot
no,
of
because
cargo
this is more
facilities.
important, because I believe you and me discussed a number of times about the slow progress of Indian projects in Bangladesh, right? It has constantly been discussed. So finally we start, something we things have started happening. So I think uh,
No,
we should have given
you
it a
know
little more publicity.
True, I agree, and I think there has been a last few years a huge thrust from India to actually ensure, because we've always been there's a complaint in the region about India delaying the implementations. It's a South Asian malaise really, but I think India's really been able to deliver some projects very timely. So I think that's we don't talk much about it, but I think it's a very positive development, and we should focus on those and many more to come. But I think they would be. Such positive developments taking place in the near future.
You said there has been complaint in just quickly. You said that there has been allegations or whatever in Bangladesh about India delaying projects. I mean, do you think it was India delaying projects, or Indian projects were getting delayed in Bangladesh? Which one is true?
uh, both sides have completely different views on the subject, and even today just now Mongla and Chittagong is also one of the subjects where they constantly blame, but we are aware of the fact that there hasn't been any detailed project report about Mongla that we've signed. But similarly, when the initial lines of credit were offered, two and then one, and I remember a lot of projects were on the table, were being discussed, but hadn't taken off. But I think, as I said, that has changed. I mean, they would say, India would often say that Bangladesh is hesitating. They haven't given any project reports. They haven't even zeroed down on which company is going to do that for. While on the other hand, they in fact would blame India, that India actually on paper has offered that. The grant, the lines of credit, they haven't really physically transferred anything. We don't know who we are going to talk to. The partner for such developmental partnership, the names are not as yet given. So there was a lot of, I think, from both sides. But this, I would actually say, that particular atmosphere has changed. I don't see that constantly bickering attitude. And I think a couple of months ago, we were on a group of us from VI had a delegation led to Dhaka. The whole mood was really, earlier it was always complaining, you didn't do this, and we would say you didn't do that. That
Exactly,
mood has changed.
exactly. I
That mood has
remember,
changed.
you have been following it for longer years than me. I have been following it for a decade, and the attitude was that we are going to war, and I'll blame you, you will blame
Yes,
me, kind of. So
yes.
I think a lot of change has happened. You see, on perception front, when the government to government people discuss, Until and unless it goes down to the people, when people understand the importance of trade, right? So, the job is not done. The moment people start demanding that trade, it is,
Yes.
I believe, do you think, just, I, do you think that last 2 years, when there was a global supply chain disruption, when the $500 container was being priced at $1,400 and still you are not getting it, when the ship is not calling on your port. So a lot of issues we
Yeah.
saw. It was having money was not enough.
That's right.
So that during that period, the trucks were rolling in and out of Bangladesh, and it was a smooth movement. And I see huge jump in import. For example, cotton import doubled, cereal import increased by 52 times. I'm comparing with
Hmm.
2019, between
Hmm.
2019 and 2021. Okay, so do you think that the last 2 years had helped to particularly last 2 years had helped to change or make create a positive perception about trade and the cooperation?
Yes, in fact, exactly this, because when the entire region of the world was facing so much of difficulty, we were still able to, despite not that we didn't have roadblocks and other, issued such kind of
There will be many
hindrances, or I mean
roadblocks. There will be many
impatience,
roadblocks.
but we were able to do that. And I think in last few days there's been a lot of conversation on this because of the Prime Minister visit to India. But I think everybody also appreciates Indian efforts to keep things going. I mean, this is something that I've seen Bangladeshis for the first time acknowledging. On a talk show, on many of our academic exchanges, there has been a very, very positive response to the way India handled the pandemic at that point, in terms of maintaining whatever limited cargo movement we could. As of course, there was talk about, the vaccines and all of that, which they have certainly welcomed that. We certainly were very, very grateful for the remdesivir that they gave to India, despite the fact that they needed the remdesivir themselves also. So there was, I think, kind of faith in each other that neighbors should look out for each other. But also, I think what has changed is, earlier, and I do believe the relation between the government to government, or business to business is functioning. But I think the common people in Bangladesh have understood the benefits of the kind of cooperation transport facilities that's happened. I think that coming down to the ground is something which has changed that whole. I'm not saying everybody has changed their entire. We know there's a large spectrum of anti-India ethos there, and a variety of reasons, historical factors, and all of that. But at the same time, I think the dividends of the bilateral projects are now being felt by the people on both sides.
People are seeing things happening. That's the basic
Yeah.
difference.